So then guys, we have the new iPhone Air, Apple's newest member to the iPhone family. But a lot of you guys want to know, how does this phone compare to say the likes of the Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge? This is Samsung's rival phone to the iPhone Air. So today what we're going to do a review of comparisons of specs. So we are going to compare the iPhone Air to the S25 Edge. And with that, let's begin then with this comparison. So as you can see right here, we have the Galaxy S25 Edge on the left and we have the new Apple iPhone Air on the right side here for this comparison. This is how it's going to be for the rest of it. So let's get started and let's have a look at the key differences at a glance here between both these phones. So starting out with the CPU, we do have that Snapdragon 8 Elite. It's an 8-core CPU, and obviously the iPhone Air, that has a 6-core CPU inside of it. Now the Snapdragon does have 6 efficiency cores and 2 performance cores. The iPhone Air has 4 efficiency cores and 2 performance cores there. But both these phones actually have 12 gigabytes of RAM inside them, which is great to see. But then the camera on paper, this is the best thing to say, is that we do have a 200 megapixel here with the S25 Edge. And this is very similar to like we have in the S25 Ultra. It's also in the Z Fold 7. And then we've also got the 48 megapixel Fusion camera here on the iPhone Air. And this is actually the same camera that's in the iPhone 17, the iPhone 17 Pro models, and it is a fantastic camera inside of it. And obviously I think we'll have to see properly on paper when you actually take a picture to see what the main differences are. Now again, on paper we have the battery. It's 3,900 milliamp battery here in the S25 Edge compared to a 3,149 milliamp. Now the first thing I'm going to say there is, do remember that Apple's batteries have always been smaller, yet they've actually outbeaten Samsung's. So for example, like Samsung with their 5,000 milliamp battery, you know, we've had that, and then a couple of years ago, you know, we had the iPhone 14 Pro Max, for example, and you know, that had like a 4,300 milliamp battery, and yet it could still outperform the 5,000 milliamp battery in the likes of say an S24 Ultra back then. So yeah, just be aware of that it doesn't mean everything here. Remember, this is just on paper here, the specs are being shown. Same with brightness, we have a 2600 nits brightness in the S25 Edge, where we've got a 3000 nits brightness at peak. But do remember that, you know, Samsung here again with their actual displays, they have a way to get rid of reflections on this quite well. So obviously, you know, that's the way they approach this, whereas Apple, they're going for the more brighter display instead here. They do have a bit of anti-reflection, but you know, that's just the way it is. And then weight, really, it's identical. It's 163 grams, 165 grams, 2 grams. It's nothing. You're not going to notice the difference here. But then what we do have a difference is that we have Galaxy AI and Gemini, whereas we have Apple Intelligence in iPhone Air. Or should I say a lack of Apple Intelligence at the moment. Only a bit of it is inside of it, so not too much there. But then moving on to the display technology comparison here then in more depth. So, you know, we do have a 6.7 inch display to 6.5 inch display OLED. So the Galaxy S25 Edge is slightly bigger here, not by much, only a tiny bit, but obviously I'd say this as well, the iPhone Air is actually slightly wider with its display, whereas we're a little bit more narrower with the S25 Edge. Both of them have refresh rates of 120 Hz and go all the way down to 1 Hz, which is great. And the technology here, we have the dynamic AMOLED compared to the Super Retina XDR. They're both AMOLED displays or OLED displays on here. Now, like I said, the S25 Edge does have the 2600 nits brightness compared to the 3000 nits, where the iPhone Air is ahead here. But do remember, we do have that anti-reflection on the likes of the Galaxy S25 Edge, what does a far better job than what iPhones do. So just be aware of that here. But then moving on from this then to the build materials and the construction. Well, both of these phones are actually made out of titanium, what is great to see. It's very lightweight, it's very strong, but obviously, you know, Galaxy, they were first with their super thin phones to have titanium in it in that sense. But then again, Apple was the first to do a titanium phone, you know, when we had the 15 Pro phones. So it swings and roundabouts here. They both got really strong glass on the back of them. We've got the Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and then we've got the Ceramic Shield 2. Both of them are super great great here and super strong. And we've also the weight, like I said before, is 2 grams in it. It's nothing. You're really not going to see this whatsoever. And the great thing is that both of them have managed to fit in some great size batteries for the size of the phone. That's the thing you've got to remember here. So you know how thin they are. So it's 3,900 milliamp, 3,149 milliamps. Now obviously on paper the Samsung is ahead here, but we'll talk more about battery life in just a moment. But moving on to performance and processing power. The S25 Edge comes with that Snapdragon 8 Elite, what is a fantastic chip. It came leaps and bounds ahead when it was first announced the end of 2024, and it's a great chip, and Samsung do work with Qualcomm to make it even more efficient and more powerful. And with that then we have an 8-core CPU at 6 efficiency cores and 2 performance cores. And then compared to the A19 Pro, well, we have the 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores inside of this. So it's a little less, but yet the power of the A19 Pro already is shown on paper, it is more powerful than the likes of the Snapdragon 8 Elite. But both these phones do have a 12 gigabytes of RAM inside of them, and then also we do have advanced AI processing with the Snapdragon, and we have a 16-core neural engine with the iPhone Air. And like I said before, we do have that kind of Galaxy AI and Gemini, what works really well with the S25 Edge, whereas we have Apple Intelligence built into the iPhone Air. What looks like it's only about half-baked at the moment. We're getting some great things with Apple Intelligence, but we just need a little bit more. Hopefully Apple does release that in the future. But there we go, you can see the differences here on performance benchmarks at the bottom, how very similar or how very different they are. But then moving on then to professional photography. So this is where things do change a fair bit, and you can see this on the back of the phone. On the S25 Edge, we actually have 2 cameras here. We have the 200 megapixel main sensor. This is the main sensor, like I said, it's very similar to the one that's on the S25 Ultra, what's also on the Galaxy Z Fold 7, but there's also a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Now I've tested out that 12 megapixel ultra wide. It's okay. It's definitely not the best there. It's not going to be anywhere near as good as, say, even the ultra wide on a normal S25 phone. So yeah, just be aware of that. It's good to have it, but it's not the best. I'm going to say that there. But then with the iPhone Air, we only have 1 camera on the rear, and that's a 48 megapixel one. And obviously this is a great camera here. Now, obviously compared to the 200 megapixel camera, again, this is just on paper that obviously the S25 Edge is ahead, but once you start using these phones, I think you'll see the clear difference. It depends on how the software utilizes those sensors to get the picture, so just be aware of that. But for front-facing cameras, well, we do have the 12 megapixel on the S25 Edge, whereas the iPhone Air has that new 18 megapixel center stage camera. It's fantastic. And this camera, obviously, you can switch it round to different orientations without actually changing your phone round. It's brilliant for that. But both these phones also have a digital zoom up to 10 times on the rear, what also does help out. But then moving on to video recording capabilities, what you've got to remember is that both these phones are not fully designed to do, you know, all your pro video recording on it, but they do have some great capabilities. So for example, that the S25 Edge can do 8K recording, but only at 30 frames per second. Whereas we can also do 4K recording on the iPhone Air, but that can go up to 60 frames per second. But obviously you can also do that on the S25 Edge too. We've also got things like AI features like audio eraser, getting rid of background noise and other things like that. Whereas obviously on the likes of the iPhone, we have action mode, cinematic mode. There's loads of other different modes too. But again, it does utilize those actual cameras. And then also we've got that camera control button, whether you like it or hate it or just don't use it. That is also on the iPhone Air. But then moving over to connectivity and wireless technology, and there is a bit of a difference here that obviously the Wi-Fi 7 speed is slightly faster than the iPhone Air on the S25 Edge. Also 5G network is mmWave, but we've also got USB-C 3.2 speeds here on the S25 Edge. However, what I would say with the iPhone Air, do remember the Wi-Fi 7 is the N1 chip, what's Apple's own custom-made chip, and this is really efficient here, to be honest. And also the same with their 5G network. It helps with their battery life, what we'll talk about in just a moment. But one thing that is a bit poor, I'm going to say, with this phone is that we've only got USB-C 2.0 speeds. I was expecting on the Air to at least get the USB 3 speeds, but yeah, it's a bit of a shame that we don't actually have that. So definitely S25 Edge is ahead. But then moving over to battery and power management, and this is where things get interesting. So on paper, like I said before, 3,900 milliamp compared to 3,149 milliamp. But the interesting thing is though, is look at this. Look at how much video playback you can get. On both these phones, they both claim up to 29 hours. What is remarkable on both phones. And this is what makes that difference. What I was talking about earlier, that even though iPhones and Apple always have a smaller battery, somehow they manage to squeeze more out of it. And I think a big part of that is that, you know, the C1X chip and also that N1 chip is really helping out to give us that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen here with both of these phones in actual battery life, which one is better. Now for wireless charging, the S25 Edge can go up to 25 watts wireless charging, but do remember that you can also do 50% rapid charge in 30 minutes with that too. Whereas with the iPhone Air, obviously we do have MagSafe charging, what you don't have on the S25 Edge. But you can actually do speeds up to 20 watts, so that is a little less, but you are getting MagSafe. There's your comparison. And then also you've got Qi 2.2 wireless charging compatibility with that as well. So that means you can MagSafe on the likes of different chargers and accessories. Just click on the back here to charge up your phone, which is really, really good to see with that one. But Apple do also claim fast charge of 50% in 30 minutes with a 20 watt plus adapter with that. But then in summary then, in looking at the specs here, we can see that obviously the S25 Edge does have a slightly larger display, but then obviously the iPhone Air has a brighter display. The S25 Edge does have more cores inside of it, but there again the A19 Pro is faster on paper, especially in single core speeds. So yeah, with less cores, both of them have 12 gigabytes of RAM. We do have the 200 megapixel camera on paper, that is better. And we've also got 8K at 30 frames per second. Whether you need to use that or not, that's another question. But whereas the iPhone Air, we have 48 megapixel and 4K Dolby Vision built into that. On paper again, the actual, battery size of the S25 Edge is bigger, but as we just seen here, that we actually do get the same kind of battery life on paper, even though, we've got a bigger battery. And then the weight of both these phones are very similar. There's just 2 grams in it. It's nothing. Even a screen protector, a film one, is even more than that. A film screen protector, they weigh around about 10 grams. So, 2 grams, that's what I'm guessing at. You're not going to notice the difference whatsoever in the phones here. I think it's going to be more of a preference what you prefer here. If you prefer a slim Android phone made by Samsung or a slim phone made by iPhone. The choice is yours on this. So overall then, it does seem like that the S25 Edge does seem better on paper. But I know this for one thing, that obviously I've used the S25 Edge, and I would even say that that camera lens, the 200 megapixel one, it is really, really good. But then if you take pictures, say, on the 48 megapixel on the iPhone 16e, you can get very close kind of photos. I don't think the megapixels are making a big deal here with this. It's literally how that sensor is being used by Samsung's, software. The same with Apple, how they're using their 48 megapixel. And I believe the same is going to be true here with the iPhone Air. Even though it's 200 megapixel, 48 megapixels, I still think that it's going to do a great job with this. The same thing for battery life as well. So battery life on the S25 Edge hasn't been the best, but, we do have custom-made parts for the actual iPhone. We have a custom-made chip. We have the N1 chip, the C1X, and we also have the A19 Pro inside of this, all built from the ground up from Apple. Whereas Samsung, they use chips from other manufacturers. They use Qualcomm's. I guess that Samsung work with Qualcomm to get the Snapdragon to work really well, but they're also using other chips like Wi-Fi and also other communication bits and pieces. Obviously, these are pieces of tech that they actually bring in-house. They don't actually build it from the ground up themselves. So maybe, you never know, that the actual iPhone Air might be slightly better in battery life, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. But overall, like I said, on paper, it looks like the S25 Edge is better, but personally, I do think that the iPhone Air might be better than we think in other areas that we've talked about today. But really, guys, that is the latest and greatest on reviews of specs of these two phones. What do you think? Do you think you're going to get either of these phones? Well, let me know in the comments below. And with that as well, guys, it's time to wrap up the video too. So if you have enjoyed watching it, please do press the like button. As always, if you want to hear the latest Apple news, reviews and comparisons, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Until next time, guys, I'll see you really soon. Take care. Bye bye.